let's begin things by assessing the current state of play. It's a very busy market. But how is the platform ecosystem marketplace landscape evolving from where
Big question.
I don't give people easy questions to begin with.
Like opening statements.
Yeah, but you've been here since this morning. You know what I'm like.
That's true, that's true.
It's how the ecosystem landscape is evolving. And again, from your respective positions, where do you think you've seen the most exciting developments? So you're going to go first, and then we'll move it along the line.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, so I think in different segments we have been seeing different developments, right? So I think we immediately relate ecosystems straight away to the retail ecosystems that we all engage with on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, as ING, we serve retail, business banking, and wholesale banking, and we see these developments in any segment going on. And we have been part of some interesting developments ourselves as well. And I think in retail, you mainly see the big neobanks coming in, engaging with partners and building their own ecosystems. BNPL players getting into e-commerce and etc. Business banking, mainly the PSPs building and enriching their ecosystems. And in wholesale banking also, we have been involved in some interesting trade finance related ecosystems, right? So you see all these developments happening on different levels.
Okay, well, considering you were intimidated by that question, you answered extremely well. So
thanks a lot, thanks a lot.
Let's move it along.
All right, so I think that the pandemic really brought some things to the surface. We started engaging with different industries, and we realized that within the financial services industry, there was a gap. So the digital doers versus the digital fakers really bubbled up to the surface. And us as consumers, what we realized that we wanted from our financial services institutions was the fact that we wanted friction-free and a wider reach, right? And that's exactly what we started seeking from our financial services institutions, as Bart was really talking about. So that's where we're at, and that's what we're looking for from our ecosystem providers. What can we get?
The unmasking. It's very dramatic, the digital fakers. Yeah.
But that's really what happened,
sure.
Right? And financial services wasn't a digital first or a deep digital. And when everybody went to that household level, we realized which one of our financial services institutions were really truly providing those digital engagements to us and were really truly smooth.
Sure, so sifting in the market, separating the wheat from the chaff.
Absolutely.
Would you like to continue?
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, the most exciting thing is around payments. So for DNB, we become the leading platform now, I would say, within payments. We started with peer-to-peer, and then we evolved and become the main wallet in Norway, and then we expanded now to become the leading wallet in the Nordics. And another reason for payments is also the development we see around the transaction costs. You see Amazon is threatening to throw out Visa. You see banks coming up with account payments, so you can lower the transaction cost and actually compete with the card schemes. And maybe the last reason for saying payments is around digital currency and also crypto, which is can be a game changer for the industry.
Okay, that's another phrase we've heard a lot of today, game changer. And the final take on that question.
Yeah, so for me, the success of marketplaces or ecosystems comes from a change or shift in understanding. So predominantly we thought about a bank has to deliver everything. A bank is a universal bank, so you cater to all of the needs that your customers might have. And I think over the last couple of years, with more and more bank or incumbent bank, fintech collaborations, we have seen that we have adopted an understanding that you don't have to necessarily build everything your own, but rather you can insource or you can partner with somebody. So it's more about sort of customers also being more picky with what they want, having higher demands of the products. We have heard before that sort of the digital experience, what they expect to get as an experience, have significantly increased and have been more demanding. So you want to offer best-in-class products, best-in-class experiences, but not necessarily build them your own, but insource quite strategically where you where you see your value contribution and where you partner with somebody.
I mean, look, what we're looking at is a digital playing field that's increasingly interconnected. So given that reality, Verena, where is it that banks need to position themselves?
Well, it really is a question of where do you see your value? So where are you best in class? And that could be many things. We see more neobanks that are predominantly dominating the customer interface, to banks that will become more a product specialist or a infrastructure provider. So we've heard a lot of BaaS, for example, infrastructure providers that have made many financial models, fintech corporations, possible that we would not have seen in the past. And others will focus more on delivering a product. So for example, with N26 or Revolut, for me, those are clear pioneers on how customer experience can look like, and they are dominating the customer interface. Whereas they work with us at Raisin as a deposit platform to cater their whole deposit category, because they don't want to build it themselves, they're insourcing strategically.
But Bart, we know that ING, they are very well known for their innovative platform strategies. So what are your thoughts as a bank on how banks should actually position themselves? What should they be doing?
Yeah, in the past, indeed, we have been quite renowned for the vision that we had regarding platforms and ecosystem. But I truly align with what Verena was saying in the sense you need to understand where you want to play, right? And there are multiple strategies that will bring you success in the future, either from an infra perspective or from a customer experience perspective. There are multiple ways to get there. But I think in the future, what will be different than in the past is that we cannot solve the new challenges in isolation, right? So if you look ahead, we have some tremendous hurdles to take in sustainability transition, making sure that there's financial inclusion, solving our industry challenges with regards to AML and KYC. These are not challenges that you can solve as a bank in isolation. So in any strategy that you take, you need to understand where your value lies, what you can solve of that part of the puzzle, and strategically reach out to partners to help you create one experience for the customer that will help us drive transitions forward.
And never losing that sense of purpose, those values which underpin the foundation.
Exactly.
But Petter as well, I mean, look, will and should all banks take the same approach? Can you have that one-size-fits-all?
I would say yes and no.
Yes?
Yes, I think one thing all the banks should realize is that we are not the center of the universe. So you have to have two thoughts in the head at the same time. You have to build your own channels and stuff like that. That, of course, is extremely important. But at the same time, you have to be present where the customer are. So having that two mindset is important. But I think, of course, all banks are different. We have to do what makes more sense for us. The borders in the digital world is diminished. So a local bank can go nationally, and then they can go globally as well to compete. I think that's the interesting part. And also you get the global players coming into your markets. And there I think, like it's mentioned here, the partnership is important. For example, you then work with other banks and competitors to meet the global competition.
And is that something that you agree with, Monica? Does it resonate at all?
Absolutely. So I think what everybody has just been talking about is figuring out what your objective is, right? And then once you figure out what your objective is, then figuring out how you're going to go to market against those and who do you need to partner with in order to strengthen that. What can you achieve on your own, and then who do you bring into that mix to partner with to then strengthen your offering to go into the marketplace. You can't do it all on your own. It's impossible.
Sure, and I want to keep the conversation on partnerships just for a moment, just to extend the focus and bring it to you, Petter, because look, how are partnership strategies set so that you can develop as digital ecosystems that gain viable traction?
I think it's important to have quite a broad strategy. Like the finance industry now is changing so fast, so you have to partner up with startups, the leading fintechs, and non-financial industry players. But most interesting, I think, is the partnerships you do with your competitors, like the frenemies. I think that's an area that everyone should explore more. But when it comes to partnership strategies, I think it's all about execution, right? So making sure that you have the in-house capability to do partnerships. For us as an incumbent bank, I mean, it was a mind shift We are so used to develop everything ourselves, but actually to change the mind internally to actually do partnership. And then the second part is the technical capabilities. You have to build the APIs, the possibilities to connect with others. I think those is important things on the strategy part.
Sure.
If I may add on that, I think Peter is mentioning an interesting fact. There will be circumstances where you will partner with somebody you considered your competitor before.
Yeah.
So it really depends on sort of what's the product category that you're looking for or that you're looking at, or the service category. And there might be some categories where you will be competing on the market, but there might be others where this is a best in class, or you are best in class, and you sort of incorporate each other.
Yeah, I mean, stay with me on this point, because a question which I wanted to put to you is what you need to consider when you're choosing a partner from the mindset or the culture perspective. You can see the synergies from a business perspective, but it goes nowhere if the rest of it doesn't work.
Yeah, I think for me personally, looking at many partnerships in the past, aligning on the strategic goal is sort of the fundamental alignment that is needed. If you're not working towards that, and if there is not senior management attention on that goal, I think then you're set up for failure. Sometimes you ask yourself sort of if you're working with a very agile fintech and then you have an incumbent bank where processes might take longer, is that a cultural fit or is that a clash? And I think it really depends. If you're open to the collaboration, you can benefit from each other, getting more knowledge on processes, understanding what this partner drives to be more be quicker or be better suited for the next one to onboard, and at the same time bringing that kind of agile spirit into a more incumbent banking setup.
Sure, let me flip it slightly to bring you into the conversation here, Monica. Again, what do you need to consider when you're choosing your partner from the technology perspective? We've got it all sorted out here on the culture and the mindset, but the technology.
Yeah, it's almost similar, right? A partnership is a partnership. Again, I'm going to pivot back to having the same set of objectives. When you're considering a vendor, first, it's a really good idea to know what your objectives are before inviting in the vendor. And then, once you know what your objectives are, is ensuring that you find the right vendor who's got the right set of solutions and products to be able to deliver on those objectives. So that's that. And then making sure that they've got a good set of references. And then it's a vendor that has the same cultural fit, right? It always helps. It goes back to that whole partnership. And then it's a vendor that you can grow with. That's always critical. So that it's not a one-off, that you can build a great relationship, a foundation with.
Sure, something meaningful, basically.
Absolutely. And then, I mean, we've been talking about it this whole time, cloud. That they've got a strong basis of a cloud technology. That is the future. So they need to be able to offer that as well.
I mean, let's follow on from that, because Bart, I mean, okay, we've established that the mindset, the technology, the key to that, of course, being the cloud. But what are the other vital components to a successful partnership? I mean, apart from aligning on values and goals, but especially in relation to sustainability, because, you can't run away from it. It's a big issue in the political conversation, and it's now infiltrated financial services.
Yeah, indeed. It's one of these things, right? That come by. ESG is one of those topics where it all drills down to kind of the customer value that you want to bring, right? So, especially if you partner up, it's different from being or getting engaged with a supplier who just offers you a product, you incorporate it, and you go to market, right? And you still can bring your own value to market, and there's nothing wrong with it. And you have maybe some supplier, and that's fine. But if you go with a partner to market, it's really about co-creating that new customer experience, right? So it's building up on one another, and then if you're building up on one another and bringing shared proposition to market, then it's more important that customer values align, right? So in customer values align on the topics of sustainability, social as well, right? So it is really about how do you want to portray yourself as a brand on market, and is that also in line with the partner's brand and the partner position that it wants to take.
And knowing what you are, there's got to be integrity behind the message if people are going to buy into it.
Yeah, and they need to be aligned on the same page, and you need to be very transparent and upfront about those things, because you need to have a conversation before you go to market and experience later on that it doesn't work, and be really rigid about this going forward if it doesn't work.
And if you get it wrong as well, then there's reputational damage to sustain potentially if you make a mess of things.
Yeah, and stop if it doesn't work anymore, right?
Okay, good advice, but unfortunately there are instances where people don't necessarily follow it. But I'm breaking away for a moment just to remind our audience that we will take questions at the end of this panel. If you've actually downloaded the app that I referenced at the very beginning of the session, then just submit your questions and comments and we'll try to deal with them as many as we can in the time available. Monica, let me bring it back to you. I want to focus on embedded finance and customer relationships. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Hit me, go on.
You can handle it, girl, you can handle it. But look, we're seeing a big rise in embedded finance across the industry. Again, one of those buzz subjects. To what extent do you personally feel that embedded finance is the future, or is it perhaps exaggerated given what else is out there?
Okay, so yes, we are seeing a rise in embedded finance, and it is driven by more discerning customers looking for better experiences. However, I want to step back for a second and say embedded finance is not something new. Auto manufacturers have been offering loans for over 100 years. That's embedded finance. Co-branded credit cards with airlines have been out in the US since the 1980s. That's embedded finance. Now, going back to kind of what I was saying before, providing that whole friction-free and wider reach that customers are looking for on a single platform becomes that whole embedded finance. And that is where the industry is now currently moving towards. Being where financial services, that whole model of before, where the customer would walk into a bank seeking a product, is now changing. It's the customer is looking to be offered the right product truly at the right time without having to put in the effort. And that is how the industry is now evolving. So.
And it's an interesting evolution as well with the rebranding, because you're absolutely correct. I mean, car companies have always been offering loans. It's embedded finance, but we've just seen it as a car company offering a loan. But look, Verena, do you agree with what Monica has just outlined? And what are the drawbacks to this approach? I mean, it's great from the customer point of view. Go to the bank, you may want to have something else. It's offered up to you, cuts the legwork. But what are the negatives on that? Or indeed, are there any negatives?
Well, I think, as Monica said, so embedded finance is nothing new. I think the scale at which we see it at the moment is probably new and has been fueled by banking as a service as well, because as a retailer, it doesn't matter which industry, if you have access to customers and you have a point of sale, you can include financial services at checkout. What I think is interesting in this development is that with some of the buy now, pay later services, such as Klarna, PayPal, and so on, we even see a reverse trend. So it's so ingrained in the customer's mind, they are so used to the customer journey that we are not at a stage anymore where a customer says, oh, that's a nice checkout process because I can use Klarna, but rather I'm so used to the Klarna checkout process, I will look which retailer is listed in their app.
It.
So yes, this is one of the drawbacks if you want, yeah.
Well, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, but Petter, I mean, what role are banks playing now and what role could they play in the future in embedded finance? Because it's changing. I mean, if the Klarna model is suddenly what everybody's running to and we're hooked on it, then...
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the banks right now are just tipping the toes in the water, and the opportunity space is like endless nearly. I think for us, it's more about creating principles around embedded finance. For example, like we discussed earlier here today, or marketplaces, it doesn't make that much sense for a incumbent bank like us to go into a marketplace where it's a lot of players and we are not able to compete on price, for example. And banking as a service, which Sam from Starlink Bank was talking about, I don't think that makes sense for an incumbent bank like us as well, as we have a lot of legacy, and being an IT provider, it doesn't make that much sense. But having meaningful embedded finance partnerships, like for example ING has done with Amazon, where you integrate, you have still your own brand, it's your product, your customers, and you can use Amazon's data to provide loans to Amazon customers. That's kind of the embedded finance cases that the banks should seek.
Bart, let me bring it back to you. I mean, how do you see embedded finance affecting the customer relationship and experience? Because on the surface, it's quite frictionless. Go into the bank, I want to know about X, I want to know about Y, apart from my overdraft, and there it is on tap.
You never want to know about overdraft, no.
I do.
No, yeah, I think it sets the new standard, right? A standard that we have all been experiencing in other industries is suddenly moving towards banking, right? It needs to be seamless, convenient, simple, everything. And I think that is the trend of embedded finance bringing to us. But as ING, we always had a strategy of creating a differentiating customer experience by being anywhere, anytime. And I think these two words we could have never put in production more than with embedded finance. We just need to be there when embedded finance is relevant for people, right? So an example, indeed, with the experience we currently have for SME banking with Amazon, we are there in the merchant platform, right? So we can offer proactively our services instead of reactively, because we were always reactive as banks. And suddenly now with embedded finance, we also have the opportunity to become proactive on somebody else's platform. And for me, embedded finance doesn't mean being invisible as a bank going forward, right? So if you look at the partnerships that we set, if we go into embedded finance, we always want to be there for our customers. And I think embedded finance is a tremendous opportunity to become more proactive, better understand our customers. So I really do see it as an opportunity to enrich the customer experience that we have been developing so far.
Okay, let's hold that thought, because what I wanted to do now is to project into the future. This is where I bring out my crystal ball. It is there, you just can't see it. Okay, and what I'm going to ask all of you is where you believe ecosystems and embedded finance will be in 10 years. I didn't save the catty questions for you guys just to stop you feeling a little bit insecure. Someone's got to draw the short straw, and it has to be Verena. You've got to start.
Very well.
Your predictive powers are very good from what I've been told.
So I think we'll see more partnerships, full stop. And I think they will predominantly emerge around SME clients or business clients overall. I think in the retail space, we've seen a lot of innovation. We had buy now, pay later as one example. Retail clients overall are quite overbanked. We haven't seen this opportunity or this kind of new business ideas in the SME and business space just yet, and I think there is a lot of movement with offering firm credit cards, completely digital, from Spendesk to Pleo to Moss and others, as well as the buy now, pay later space, but now transferred onto the business side of things, which your Payhawks, Billy, and so on. Okay, interesting prediction, Peter.
Yeah, I think I will say invisible finance. It's not a buzzword, but we run a pilot with ING where you can go into the public transport and not out again without thinking about payments. You also see Amazon go in, go out. I think, in the future you will have finance embedded and you don't think about it.
Okay, Monica.
Faster. Everything is going to be faster.
Nanoseconds faster.
Nanosecond, contactless, very customer-centric. And I mean, I think everything was accelerated through the pandemic, and customers really pushed it. And I do agree. The business customer, the SMB, is going to start seeing some love as a result as well, because retail has gotten its love, and I think SMB and business also is now seeing that they've got to really move forward as well, because all of those workers and all of those organizations were also working remotely.
Yeah.
And now they are feeling the discrepancies as well as a result.
Okay, so speed and love for the SMBs.
Yeah.
Are we going to get more speed and love?
Yeah, speed, definitely. I think it's the seamless experience, right? So 10 years from now, I think one of the things that we're deep diving into now is ING more and more as well, is like How will the whole new digital metaverse Web 3.0 discussion turn out, right? So to bring in a couple of other buzzwords. And we have been seeing convergence between industries, right? The industries lines being blurred because the customer really doesn't care. Like we have embedded finance because the customer just wants to buy a product, right? So that will definitely continue, but how will that play out in a completely new digital world? And I think that's something to really explore in the next 10 years, because new generations are just so thought of being in this digital world. And I've been on a couple of expeditions, you should all do this, into this new world, and how will that convert?
The metaverse world.
Exactly, how will it convert to the real world? It's something to look out for if you talk about 10 years from now, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, talking the metaverse on the Monday, it's a bit much.
Yeah, it is a lot, I know,
We're probably going to have to stay there, though, for the next question, and this is the final one before we take questions from our audience, so please do keep sending them on in. But look, given your visions for the future, are there any players that we should keep an eye on, because they are the ones who are going to be dominating the landscape here? So, Monica, would you like to give us your
Anybody who's already started on the journey will end up on top, and the ones who haven't, they better start very quickly, because otherwise they're going to lose competitive edge.
Okay, Peter. Sorry.
Sorry. It's so many good players there. I think, but it's the digital ones like Raisin, and those are the ones to watch, I think.
Okay.
Well, I can just concur. But also big techs. So Google has also announced to start a partnership with Deutsche Bank on cloud banking. So we all should look out for being there first.
Head spinning.
Yeah. I think the ones that inherently do not think I can build this myself in the future, right? So I can build everything myself. So the ones who are open to partner, understand what their core value is that they bring to the customer, but want and is open to enrich that experience with partners as well.
Okay, fantastic. Don't go yet, because I have some questions. Rule of thumb as well, if there's any hesitation, I either look at somebody with my beady eye or I just throw a name out. You've all been warned, Okay, but are you ready for the questions?
Yes.
No.
Fantastic.
First question to you.
Now, actually, it's going to you because you nominated her. You said that embedded finance doesn't mean banks have to be invisible. How else can you ensure that banks don't become a faceless utility and lose that customer ownership? Who would like to tackle that one?
It's a big question.
Okay, I can kind of start.
I think you all want to tackle it, really.
Okay, so if we take a look at the loan financing, for example, right? So from a customer journey perspective, everybody can get along in that entire journey, from researching for a property to moving the customer into their home. And along that journey, there is some banking and some non-banking from an embedded finance perspective. So a customer, the banking part can be, applying for the loan, pre-approval, the mortgage piece of it, the insurance piece of it, maybe not, right, depending on the bank. And then it could be credit card, potentially. And then that's about it. Maybe home improvement lending. And then if we move to non-bank services, it could be legal services, it could be contractor, it could be agency services, legal, etc. So all of that could be moved into that entire customer journey from beginning to end on one single platform for the customer.
Okay.
Just to add on to Monica here, I think for the banks, at least for DNB and also for ING, we have a really strong brand, right? So it makes sense for a lot of the partners, at least in the conversation we are in, to front our brand with our financial services, because that gives credibility to them as well. And then we also see that in the process, for a lot of the embedded finance cases that we work on, it doesn't make sense to have a lot of players there. So you kind of get the exclusivity for working with that partner as well. So it's a lot of good things for banks. I think working with embedded finance like the Amazon case again, you can reach not only ING customer through Amazon Surface, you reach the whole market, right? And you have the exclusivity, and you and so on.
Yeah, and it's interesting what Peter says, right? It's also the way you position yourself in this partnership, right? Do you proactively take a stance? Do you start using that platform as well? Or are you acting just as a supplier, plug in your product and then leave it with that? Or are you actively engaging with one another to actually make that product offering better? And that's I think, how you can stay visible as a bank going forward. Yeah.
Okay, you all handled the question very well. Please do go for it.
Just a short remark. It sounds a little bit like the question suggests it's a bad thing to be invisible as a bank, but think about banking as a service. The value proposition of a banking as a service bank is to provide the infrastructure. This is the core value. This is where they are best in class, and not necessarily to own the customer interface. So I think for some banks, yes, they have a strong brand. They have a loyal and trusted customer base. It might not make sense to sort of engage in that kind of services, but that there are others for which this is the business model. So I would disagree that it's necessarily bad to sort of become invisible. It depends on what's your service.
Okay then, we've got time to squeeze in just one more question, so I'm afraid you're going to have to be brief, if indeed you can be, when we're talking about the metaverse. How do you think the metaverse is set to impact embedded finance partnerships, etc.? Rein yourselves in, guys, so please, who would like to tackle that one first before we close out? Before I nominate.
I think it offers massive opportunities. I think somebody before mentioned, I think it was even you, mentioned the gaming space. There has been a lot of commercialization in gaming, and I think metaverse will just follow the same.
Right, so gaming in the metaverse. Peter.
I will pass it on.
I'm
passing
that's
it
fair
on.
enough.
I think it's a big question, but it's rethinking the interaction that you will have with your future clients, right? So the new generation is coming, they're using this en masse. So you really have to rethink how you are going to deal with this younger generation that is used to having an entanglement between the digital and real world. So.
It still sounds like too much from Monday, the metaverse.
Yes, and we need another 2 hours
to
so
an old head like mine can only take so much in. But look, guys, we're going to have to leave it there. But thank you so much. Brilliant contribution, plenty there to think about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.